Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank you, Chairman Carter, for holding today's hearing, and you, Mr. O'Donnell, for testifying on the critical issue of oversight of potential waste at the EPA. During the Biden-Harris administration, the EPA's budget has grown from a little over $9 billion to $10.1 billion, an increase of 10% in just 4 years. On top of this, the IIJA and the IRA greatly increased the resources that EPA has to distribute. The IIJA gave the EPA $60 billion in taxpayers' money over 5 years. And that was the single largest appropriation for EPA ever. The IRA followed with allocating EPA $41.5 billion of taxpayers' money to distribute over 10 years. The EPA is already struggling with managing the large influx of funding for existing programs like the state revolving funds, let alone the entirely new programs for which the EPA has no experience, and even the recipients may have no experience. Given the vast amount of funds that the EPA has now been flooded with, it is critical that there is strong oversight. Quite honestly, your job got tougher. The IG's office at the EPA needs to be active and aggressive in attacking abuse and fraud. Mr. O'Donnell, would you elaborate on the challenges that the EPA faces to safeguard the taxpayers' money?
I think you've heard from the agency on personnel issues, and it's an issue that we often find is there's a shortage of workforce for the purposes of grant management, data management.
In your office, do you have workforce issues right now?
In my office, you talk about how the EPA's budget has increased by 10%. My office since 2011 has decreased by perhaps 20%.
Are there open positions in your office for the oversight that we all know is necessary?
Only to fill people who have left. We've had to shrink our workforce, our core workforce, over the last year.
Mr. O'Donnell, we've already discussed the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Do you have confidence, based on your experience with other established programs, that the EPA has the data and the experience to monitor this massive spending?
I think I have concerns about it. Those concerns I think the EPA has as well, given the breadth and the scope of and the complexity. I cannot say enough about how complex these programs are going to be. It is as if the agency is funding an investment bank that will do equity, it'll do fixed income, it will do complex financial transactions. As I said yesterday, the agency was kind enough to give us a presentation on how they'll use a private bank.
Should the agency be an investment bank? I'm perplexed by that response.
Well, it is. I think it's unusual.
I think it's more than unusual. I think we should be looking at this quite seriously, as these are taxpayer dollars that need to be used in a really judicious manner to be able to understand, and your responsibilities are to make sure that those guardrails are in place to see that there is a responsible stewardship of those taxpayer dollars. In your talk, in your testimony about the general resistance of EPA to bring examples of waste and fraud to your attention, can you elaborate on this and what it means for holding recipients accountable?
We have had instances where the EPA is aware of attempts to defraud them or actually defraud them, and instead of bringing those to our attention, they ignore them or will wait for many months, and in doing so, really undermine our ability to refer a criminal or civil case.
How do you get that line of communication so there's not long time gaps before this is brought to your attention, these months that you're talking about?
It's got to be a cultural thing at the EPA that they're first.
Can you change that culture at the EPA from your leadership? Do you have the capabilities of doing that?
We try. We have a program to reward agency whistleblowers who identify waste, fraud, and abuse that we actually can recover.
Are there examples where these whistleblowers have stepped forward and then you've had to take the necessary steps?
We have not yet paid anyone out. I'm waiting to, but we have not. No one has come to us yet.
My time is expiring, but I do have a request that the follow-up occurs that when there are these cases that occur, when whistleblowers, when your internal guardrails come into play, because yet they're not, would you please let this committee know? Because I think it's important because of the significant funds that are now turned into the EPA's hands because of the taxpayer dollars, which have now been transferred to the EPA. We need to make sure that waste, fraud, and abuse is not rampant. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired, and I thank you for being here today.